Hello, everyone. My name's Jewel. I'm a senior in ADS. I work down at the meat lab, so obviously I was going to pick meat and muscle as my favorite anatomical structure of livestock. Um, you'll have to forgive me. AI is not my friend. So these slides, well, what I say is going to be a little bit more important than what is displayed in the video. But basically, I'll just give you a little overview. Meat quality is judged by consumers on color, tenderness, juiciness, and flavor. These are sensory characteristics that are shaped by four key structural and compositional factors: the structure of the muscle, the arrangement of the fibers and the fiber types, intramuscular fat content, and the amount of connective tissue. Because cattle, sheep, pigs, poultry, and fish have extremely different muscle anatomy and physiology, predictable differences in meat quality among the species is kind of very important to know, and how our biological distinctions is critical for developing strategies to optimize sensory traits in each livestock species. By combining molecular, developmental, and physiological perspectives, one can better understand why meat from different species exhibits such unique qualities. So first, I'm going to get into what is meat quality was kind of just in there. So I'm going to go ahead and skip over that. So factors that affect meat quality are some of the listed ones there, but I'm going to go more off of my script, like I said in the beginning, rather than my slides. They're just a little differing than my script. So our muscle structure itself plays a major role in meat characteristics. In one of the articles that I researched, it explains that muscle fibers, connective tissue, and IMF means intramuscular fat. So that's what I'm going to refer to it as that. All independently affect quality outcomes. Connective tissue determines baseline toughness, while IMF contributes to juiciness, flavor, and marbling associated tenderness. The degree of pattern of these components vary by species and by specific muscles within an animal, accounting for substantial differences in texture and in flavors. So ruminants, such as cattle and sheep, typically have thicker connective tissue and more heat-stable collagen rather than monogastric species, resulting in firmer texture in our ruminants. So in cattle, IMF is more prominent and common, especially in the longissimus dorsi, which contains or enhances juiciness and flavor. Poultry muscles are extremely lean and have pale coloration, and then fish muscles are unique with minimal connective tissue, but they produce very tender flesh and have a low water holding capacity within those muscles. Let's stay here for a second on the slides. So molecular regulation of fiber types also plays a crucial role. Another research article that I was researching has this little blurb, and it highlights epigenetic and transcriptional mechanisms that control the distribution of oxidative and glycolytic fibers across species. Differences in these regulatory mechanisms explain why some species, such as pigs, retain high fiber type plasticity, while cattle show more limited adaptability. These variations have important consequences for tenderness, juicy, and meat metabolism. Muscle fiber development, or myogenesis, further influences meat quality. So this guy's name is Pickard, and his group researched. Sorry, my dog is right here, and I'm trying to get them to chill out. So Pickard, where did he go? Oh, yes, describe two waves: primary fibers and primary fibers, which are slow oxidate or slow to oxygenation. Yes, form first, followed by secondary fibers, which are mostly fast twitch, surround the primaries. In cattle and sheep, secondary fibers formation is largely complete at birth, fixing the total number of fibers early. In contrast, pigs and poultry continue secondary fiber proliferation after birth, resulting in more fibers per unit area and smaller diameters, which contribute to a more desirable texture and metabolism. Wow, none of that's on the slide, but I'm sorry, guys. These slides did not turn out how they were supposed to. So the genetics, some breeds just produce more naturally tender meat, especially if there's an age difference within, not only within the breed, within the species, and then within the age of those categories. It influences fat distribution and affects muscle structure, and that's all just got to do with a little bit of the genetics. And then nutrition and feeding. Our diet obviously impacts our flavor and fat content. That IMF that we keep talking about is very important very important for our tenderness of our product. It can be achieved by a balanced feed regimen, and also the proper regulation of a pasture versus grain can kind of mitigate whether it's sub-Q or intermuscular fat or intramuscular fat. So animal handling also has a huge, um, a huge, uh, a huge hand in our tenderness, our juiciness, and our colors. So as we all know, our DFD and PSC are both color factors that has to do with pH and pH imbalance within the muscles due to our cortisol spike, whether that be long-term stress or short-term stress. It does affect our meat quality. It makes it unpalatable. It makes it not appealing to the eye, which is that's how you sell meat, is by the quality and how it looks. So it's very important to maintain proper handling. That way we can ensure a better quality at the end to sell. And then our slaughter practices also affect tenderness. The main point that I had about this was that example is on the kill floor. It's like a little electrode that we put in their nose, and it shocks their body. That way, the sarcolemmic bonds that are formed within the muscles, basically, it's just saying the muscle fibers are very tight, and then whenever they're shocked, they relax. It basically just breaks that down to provide a more tender product. And then our processing methods, of course, this goes back to oxidation. So the biggest one I have with this, or biggest example I have with this, is our lamb. Whenever we put our whole lamb out, or our subprimals out into retail, or retail cuts out into retail, they are vacuum sealed, which means that they do not have exposure to oxygen, which means that they will not change color, and they will maintain that pink or dark red color meat. However, when we grind our lamb, we put it in a non-vacuum sealed bag, which not only increases the surface area of each particle to increase the oxidation method, it also allows oxygen to get into the bag. So normally we freeze our lamb, or always we freeze our lamb before we put it out into retail to maintain that pink color and that eye-appealing presence to our consumers. This is basically what I just said. The marbling, and then the texture, or the color really, and then texture also varies by species. Obviously, our pork is a little bit softer than our beef. It depends on what muscle you're looking at. For example, our hind quarter of our pork is going to be a little bit softer than our beef hind quarter, whereas our longismus dorsi within our beef is going to be maybe a little bit more tender. I know whenever we cut pork loins, they can kind of tend to maybe slant a little bit, kind of not hold their shape as well as a ribeye. But I do know with the intramuscular fat of a ribeye, it tends to be a little softer whenever you cook it. And then consumer preference, it varies a lot within a culture. So at the Meat Lab, we have a few different cultural groups that will come in and ask for different cuts. This kind of will vary the way that we will cut into a muscle, and it varies the tenderness of the muscle, the appearance of the muscle, and sometimes the marbling depends on like how you cut something, whether you're leaving part of a muscle out or whether you're including a muscle. The best example I have of this is a picanha. So the picanha is the top sirloin cap off of the hind quarter of an animal, and basically it's a Brazilian cut, or if you're French, it's a culotte. basically it just has that fat cap on top, which is the subcute, and you cook it to render that fat down into the muscles or into the meat, and then you slice it. Whereas if we were to cut it for maybe a more traditional household, it would be a sirloin steak, a boneless sirloin steak. That would leave the cap on the sirloin, and then we would just cut it into steaks. So very different. And then improving our meat quality just has to do with better nutrition, a little bit better nutrition, better handling, and also having a good butcher. So if anybody ever needs, shameless plug, if anybody ever needs anything, just come down to the meat lab. Don't hesitate. And then in summary, we have a lot of factors going into our meat quality. I'm just going to read off my script real quick. In conclusion, interspecies difference in muscle architecture, fiber development, connective tissue, and intramuscular fat distribution underpin the diversity of meat quality traits. These anatomical and physiological features interact with nutrition, pre-slaughter handling, and production systems to create the color, tenderness, juiciness, and flavor consumers experience. Because these processes are species-specific, intervention in genetics, diet management, and postmortem handling must be tailored to each species to consistently produce high-quality meat. All right, thank you guys so much for sticking around. So sorry that the slides were a little disappointing, but I hope that I did not lose anybody in the weeds of the essay or in my script. Thank you very much.